uh, study that we had last year regarding Nahjul Balagha. I would like to again dedicate the 6 weeks to another look at Nahjul Balagha. And we have to realize that when we talk about Nahjul Balagha, of course, Amirul Momineen for us after Rasulullah is the most reliable source of knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent down for us. And the Quran itself, talks about in Surah, if we look at Surah Al-Ra'd, the last ayat is the ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is consoling the Prophet by saying to him that this people of Mecca who deny your nubuwwat, don't be worried about it. Don't sort of go into, if I may use the modern terminology, don't be distressed or depressed because of the people of Mecca who are saying that you are not a Rasul. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to him, وَيَقُولُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, those who do not believe, they say to you, لَسْتَ مُرْسَلًا, you are not a Rasul, you are not a messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In a response to them, don't worry about it. Just قُل, say to them, كَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهِيدًا بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَكُمْ. Say to them that I don't care whether you believe in me or not, you testify to my risalat or not. It is sufficient between me and you that Allah is the witness of my risalat. And then Allah says, not only me, not only Allah, وَمَنْ عِنْدَهُ عِلْمُ الْكِتَابِ. O Muhammad, say to your followers, the people of your city, not the followers, those who are kafir, that, it is sufficient for me that Allah and the one who has been given the knowledge of the book, referring to the Quran, they testify to my risalat. So if you reject me, it doesn't really matter at all. Now, who is this person? Man indahu ilm al-kitab. The only one who can really claim that in that time frame of the Prophet's life is none other than Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. The Prophet himself, he said in this famous hadith, everybody accepts, Ana Madinatul Ilm wa Aliyun Babuha, that I am the city of knowledge and Ali is the gateway to that knowledge. And so one of the important things we see is that Nahjul Balagha has been accepted by the majority of Muslims as an important source of Islamic teachings. One of the beauties of Nahjul Balagha is just like the Quran. Of course, Quran is Kalamullah. There's no comparison there. But, we see a beautiful similarity that Quran has a variety of topics. None of its surahs, especially the longer ones, talk about one subject. It moves from one topic to another. And you see the same thing in the khutbahs and the lectures of Amirul Momineen. Of course, some of them are very specific to one theme, but in many places you will see the variety of the scenes, changing from one to another. And this is something which has even amazed people like Sheikh Muhammad Abdu, the Mufti of Egypt, almost a century ago. He, in his visit to Lebanon, when he was in a self-imposed exile, he happened to, know about Nahjul Balagha. Before that, he had never heard about this book. In Lebanon, he heard about it, and when he went through it, he was an alim, as a scholar of Arabic language also, and it really amazed him. And he says that, when I look at it, I see in every page as if, I'm sitting there looking at the history and the drama of Islam. One scene is changing, then another scene is coming, the backgrounds are changing. And this variety of the themes in Nahjul Balagha, frequently changing backgrounds, really amazed him quite a lot. And it actually made him write a preface and a commentary on Nahjul Balagha. I have one of the editions which was done by him, because Nahjul Balagha is a book written 1400 years ago. Not all the Arabs of this time would be able to even know all the words. And so wherever the words are difficult, Sheikh Abdul has given a simple explanation of the words in the footnotes. And he is the one who actually made the book Nahjul Balagha more familiar among the Sunni Arab world. Before that, it was not that much known among them. And so keeping that in mind, let me, for tonight, inshallah, we'll be doing the same as we used to do last year or in the last session, that we'll be sending the khutbahs, the translation ahead of time. We couldn't do it for this week, but inshallah from next week, as long as we have your names in the list, your email address, we'll be sending you the khutbah so you can maybe read it ahead of time, or when you come here, you have it with you, and then we go through the background of it and the commentary of the khutbah. For tonight, what I have is khutbah number 182 of Nahjul Balagha. We don't have the projector, but we were able to send the slides by email, so inshallah we'll be able to see it on the TV screens. This again, the khutbah number 182. Again, it has a variety. It has the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what we call hamd and thana of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Amirul Momineen talks about some of the advice he has for the people about, luxuries of this dunya and to remember the akhirah. Then there are a couple of historical events that he talks about. The importance of this khutbah is that this is a khutbah given by Amirul Momineen in Kufa just the day before he was wounded by Ibn Muljim Mal'un. So this is probably his last khutbah as such. And so from the historical time frame, this khutbah is very important, especially the last part of it. Inshallah, we'll look at it. In the beginning, when we look at the way Amirul Momineen talks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is one of the favorite subjects of Ali. He uses not just very simple words, he goes into the depth of understanding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Actually, he concludes that section by saying that it is impossible for a human being to fully comprehend Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, Quran gives us the guidance to look at the ayat and the symbols, but for someone to say that I can fully appreciate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is beyond our ability, and that's not what is expected. And so he begins by praising Allah, and then a prayer for help, and then confessing our belief in Him, and then we go on to some other similar issues in this first part. If I may very quickly go through some of the wordings. Alhamdulillahi alladhi ilayhi masa'irul khalq wa awaqibul amr. Begins by saying that, praise be to Allah, to whom returns all the creation, and the end of all matters is with Him. Now, the translation doesn't really give us that sense there. There are two terms used here. One is khalq, one is amr. And an easy explanation of this term, because we have in Islamic theology, we talk about the issue of al-khalq wal-amr. And Allah is the master of khalq as well as amr. And a simple way of looking at this would be to say khalq means, the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which in many cases is not done directly, but Allah has created a process. For example, we are also makhlooq of Allah. Allah has created us, but He has not created us directly. He has created a process. He created Adam and Hawa, and from that process we came to this dunya. So we are also khalq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then there is another realm of this universe, which is known as, the world of Amr. where there is no intermediaries. For example, when we look at the issue of, the soul of Adam. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the malaika that, the body of Adam is already ready, but this is a lifeless body. When وَإِذَا نَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي, when I breathe the ruh in him, this is Allah saying, I am doing this. This becomes the matter of amr, where the creation is there, but it is immediate. And so Amirul Momineen uses those two different aspects by saying, praise be to Allah, where everything, the khalq as well as amr, returns to Him. He is the origin of everything. And then basically the issue is that, when Ali says the khalq, the creation depends on Him. And the beginning of the process, which began with His amr, He is also the owner of that amr. And this is another way of saying the same thing in the Quran, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We belong to Allah in totality, and we are going to return back to Him. After that, Amirul Momineen says, we render His praise for the greatness of His generosity, the charity of His, the clarity of His proofs, the increase of His bounty and His favors, the praise which may fulfill His right and repay His thanks. And it will take us, near to His reward and be productive of increase in His kindness. Since we would like to praise Allah in such a way that we get close to Him, and because of our praise, He will give us more. When He gives us more, we have to praise Him more, and the process goes on again and again and again. As He says in the Quran, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you are thankful to me, I'm going to increase the bounties for you. And when it's increased, you have to thank Him. And when you again thank Him, He says, okay, I'm going to give you more. And so the process, goes on and on and on. And then Ali says, we seek His help, like the person who is hopeful of His bounty and has the desire of His benefit, and he is confident that Allah can ward off, prevent the calamities from us. And we basically seek help like somebody who acknowledges the gifts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and is obedient bil-amali wal-qawl, in action as well as in words. And so that's an important thing that Ali says. When you talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, emphasize on this point that you are obedient to Him in words as well as in deeds. And then he goes on to the third point there. He talks about, again, continuing the praise, talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. نؤمن به إيمان من رجاء موقنا وعناب إليه مؤمنا. We believe in Him like the one who basically has conviction in the hope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We never lose the hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We believe in Him, and we are inclined to believe in as a believer and a mu'min. We humble ourselves before Him obediently, and like somebody who believes in His oneness exclusively, and the one who seeks refuge with Him almost constantly. Let me just move very quickly to the second part, which is second part of this praise is about the unity of God, where Amirul Momineen says, praise to Allah. لم يولد سبحانه فيكون في العز مشاركا ولم يلد فيكون موروثا حالكا. He says, praise, Allah the glorified has not been born. Because if He was born, then somebody would be a partner in His power and glory. We know if somebody does a good thing, we always say, well, this is the hard work of the parents also. So the parents they share in the glory of their children. And so Amirul Momineen is saying that, glorified is Allah who was not born. He was there all the time. So the question of him being born doesn't arise at all. So there's no issue of saying he is great, so his father must be greater, or he has an influence in his greatness. And then walam yalid, and he does not even beget anyone. He doesn't give birth to anyone, because then what it happens? When there is somebody is born, then that person thinks about, being the waris and the heir of Allah. And so the issue is that don't think of Allah like a human being. He is not a human being. He is not an insan. Laysa kamithlihi shay. This is what Amirul Momineen is emphasizing. And then he says, lam yataqaddamuhu waqtun wala zaman. Hours and minutes and time has not gone ahead of him. Many times people say, well, when was Allah born? They even ask the Prophet and the Imam, can you tell us when was Allah born? The issue is that when you say when you talk about time, Allah is the creator of time itself. So you cannot even comprehend Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the limitation of waqt and zaman. And so this is where Ali is saying, وَلَمْ يَتَقَدَّمُهُ وَقْتٌ وَلَا زَمَانٌ. It's not that, waqt and zaman were ahead of him and then he came in later on. But he is the creator of waqt and zaman. And, there's no issue of him increasing or decreasing. Because if you remember, we had used these terms a few years ago when we were talking about Islamic theology. He is wajib al-wujud. We are mumkin al-wujud. Wajib al-wujud means somebody who is in totality existing. Existence is him. There's no issue of him being less and then becoming more. We are mumkin al-wujud. Our existence is a probability. It is possible. So we could be there, we could not be there. We could increase, we could decrease. But these issues don't come when we talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Going on, he then talks about, وَمِن شَوَاهِدِ خَلْقِهِ. He says, Allah has provided certain evidence and proofs for us for His existence. And he basically talks about, gives us two examples actually. One, he talks about the creation of the heavens. Heavens and heaven is different. This is small letter, this is skies, asman, not jannat. When you write heaven as singular, which capital H, that's jannat, like paradise. But when you talk about, heavens, or it's referring to what is up there, we believe in 7 heavens, 7 skies. The science has not yet reached to a level where we can comprehend it, but it's there in the Quran. Allah talks about it. And so, referring to the samawat, he says, among the proofs of His creation is the creation of the skies, which are fastened without pillars and stand without any support. He called them. This is the issue of Amr. He just said, be, and they responded. Obediently, humbly, without any laziness or saying, okay, I'll come, there's not, the skies, the samawat just responded immediately. And, if they had not acknowledged Allah as the Creator, and if they had not obeyed Him, this is what Ali is saying, then Allah would not have made the heavens, the skies, up there as the place of His arsh, and as the abode for His malaika, and also the place where the deeds and the words of the righteous people will go. So that is a very sacred, honorable place, the samawat. And it is an honorable place because they respond to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's interesting, Amirul Momineen says, if it was not, if the samawat would not have responded immediately and obediently, then Allah would not have made it mas'adan lil kalima at-tayyib wal amal as-salih min khalqihi. He would not have made it as the place where the good words and good deeds of His people will be deposited. All our records go there. But you will see Ali is using the term al-kalim al-tayyib, the words first, and then good deeds later on. Now this could have two meanings. One is that, first the iman, the words have to come, and then the good deeds follow. Or it could even be that although good deeds are important things, but Ali seems to have singled out good words. So it's so important that we be very careful in what we are saying, because many good comes out of what we say, and most of the problems we have in our life comes out of what we say. As I said it so many times, it is not what you say, it is how you say, which is very important. Then Ali talks about the stars. Again, talking about the glory and power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَجَعَلَ نُجُومَهَا أَعْلَامًا يَسْتَدِلُّ بِهَا الْحَيْرَانِ فِي مُخْتَلِفِ فِجَاجِ الْأَقْطَارِ. He says, then Allah made the stars. The stars were not only to decorate the sky. That's one reason Quran talks about it, that Allah had made the skies as decoration for the sky. The stars as decoration for the sky, but it is also used as a way of, the signpost for the travelers who are lost. And it's amazing that, I don't think it was any religion which ordered people to do that, but I think human beings use their intelligence, and they realize, especially the North Star has become a way of, knowing your direction, especially the people who are traveling in the sea and even on the land. And even now, when you look at the scientists, when they study about the sky, for them, the point of reference always is the North Star or other stars in the sky. And so Ali says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the stars as the signs for the people to know the directions. And then he says, the darkness of the night did not prevent the light of the stars. And this is showing the contrast, that normally when the darkness of night comes, everything is dark. But he says, although everything is dark, the stars are still there. And the moon is still there up, and you can see it very clearly. Finally, in this section, Amirul Momineen talks about the absolute knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's amazing that, he's the ruler of the time, he's a political leader, he's a religious leader, he's also the judge, and he's also a scholar. And the way he's able to just, sit down in the minbar there and give his, the way he explains Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here he says, فَسُبْحَانَ مَنْ لَا يَخْفَى عَلَيْهِ سُوَادَ غَسَقِ دَاجٍ وَلَا لَيْلُ سَاجٍ فِي بُقَاءِ الْعَرْضِينَ الْمُتَطَاطِنَاتِ وَلَا فِي بُقَاءِ السُّفُعِ الْمُتَجَاوِرَاتِ. He says, glory be to Allah, from whom neither the blackness of the dark dusk or the gloomy night in the low parts of the earth or on the high dim mountains is hidden from him. Nothing is hidden from him. Nor the thundering, the sound of the thunders of the clouds in the horizon of the skies, nor the sparkling of the lightning in the clouds, nor the falling of the leaves blown away by the wind to one place to another, or the pour down of the rain from the sky. Nothing is away from His knowledge. It's not that, He has created such a vast universe, and now He Himself doesn't know what's going on. He knows everything. Ali says He knows where the drops fall, where they settle down, where the food is there and where it is being dragged. And He says He even knows that what is the level of the sustenance that the mosquitoes need, and whether it is there for them or not. He knows what the female bears in the womb. So His knowledge is absolute. Nothing is hidden from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so he goes on to say, Alhamdulillah al-ka'ini qabla an yakuna kursiyin aw ars aw arsh aw samain aw arab aw jan aw ins. You know, praise be to Allah who existed before the coming into existence of the throne of Allah, or the sky and the earth and the jinn and the human. Nothing was there, but He was there. لا يدركه بوهم ولا يقدر بفهم. You know, He cannot be perceived by the imagination of the people, nor measured by the fahm and understanding of the human beings. And he says, it shouldn't be that you think that if somebody is praying to Allah and Allah is listening to his dua, it means he is occupied and busy and you cannot talk to him. And Ali says, وَلَا يَشْغُلُهُ سَائِلٌ وَلَا يَنْقُصُهُ نَائِلٌ. He says when he is listening to dua of one person, it doesn't mean he doesn't have time for you. You know, he's busy now, so you have to line up, you know, to talk to him. No, he can listen to millions of people at the same time. And when he gives to one, it doesn't mean that his treasure is going down. Sometimes, you know, this whole issue of jealousy, the way ilm akhlaq, our ulama say that if there is this element of hasad, just think about it, you know. Who are you to decide whether Allah should give to that person or not? And if He gives, it doesn't mean it's going to be less and you will not get your share. You know, think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's there. When He gives to somebody, there is no diminishing as far as His treasure of blessings is concerned. لا ينظر بعين ولا يحد بعين. You know, He does not see by eyes. This is where Ali is saying that if you think of Allah as a human being, then you will see if He's looking at one person, then He cannot see the other person. But no, He doesn't see or listen to our du'as by the organs that we use. He does not see by the eyes, and therefore He cannot be confined to a place. He doesn't have a companion. He does not create with the help of His limbs, doesn't have limbs, and He cannot be perceived by our senses. Nothing is la yuqasu bin nas. Do not compare Him to human beings. You know, and then he gives the example. You hear that we say that Musa is Kalamullah. Kalimullah, not Kalamullah. Kalimullah means somebody, Allah talked to him. Now when we say Allah talked to Musa, what does it mean? Was he using his lips? There's no issue of lips. So he can see, he can hear, he can talk, but not by the means that we are used to. So we should never ever think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a human being. Just yesterday we had some visitors here from a Christian seminary, and one of the issues they raised was they were saying, you know, don't you think that using the term Father for God brings you closer to God? And I said, you know, we are as close to God as you think of your God in your faith. And I talked about this ayat which talks about, you know, نَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْكُمْ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. I'm closer to you than your jugular vein and things like that. He said, but the problem we have is if we use the term Father for God, then we immediately think of God as a human, in human form. And that's why we stay away from it. All these terms of Father and Son, you know, maybe on a symbolic level you can say that, but we have problem with it because we know that symbolic terms then are taken into literal sense, and then we have problem as far as our Tawheed is concerned. And so this is where Ali is saying, as Quran says all the time, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ, there is nothing like Him. Let me now quickly move on to the next passage where Ali is talking about أُوصِيكُمْ عِبَادَ اللَّهِ بِتَقْوَى اللَّهِ. He says, I would like you to have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, consciousness of Allah's presence in your life at all the time. don't let, the summary of his statement on this section is that don't let the luxuries of this life deceive you and forget the hereafter. Keep that in mind at all the time, that one day you have to go in the journey of death towards the hereafter. And there you will be held accountable for what you do. And he gives an example. He says, if there was anyone who had the worldly power to prevent death, it was Sulaiman bin Dawood alayhi salam. Allah had given him everything. Allah had made him, even the winds in his control. Even the jinns were in his control. So many things were in his control, but even he could not escape from death. And of course, for us, Rasulullah is the best of all the prophets. But even he was not exempted from the process of death. So the death is going to come, and this is where Amirul Momineen starts with a positive example of Sulaiman bin Dawood alayhi salam. That remember him, that who was given control over the domain of the jinn and men, along with prophethood and the great position in the eyes of God. But when he finished what was due in his food of this world, when his rizq ended and exhausted his fixed time, the bow of destruction shot him with the arrow of death. Malakul Maut came and took him away. And nothing could stop that. His houses became vacant. He was the king. His habitations became empty. Another group of people inherited them, and certainly the bygone centuries have a lesson for you. And then he goes to other negative examples. First he talked positively, the positive example of Sulaiman, and then he talks about, he says, أين العمالقة وأبناء العمالقة أين الفراعنة وأبناء الفراعنة. Where are the Amalekites? Where are the sons of the Amalekites? Where are the Fir'auns of the time? And where are the children of the Fir'aun? They are all gone. The nations who came in the past, they had this glory that even now the modern world, in spite of all its knowledge and technology, still salutes the pyramids of Egypt. They salute the Fir'aun. But Imam says, but where are they? What happened to them? They are nothing now. Their descendants are nothing. And so they came with they advanced with their armies, defeated thousands of people, controlled countries, but then eventually, they ended. There was nothing left. And therefore, he is giving the example positively as well as negatively. That look at Sulaiman bin Dawood on one hand, and then you have Fir'aun and likes of Fir'aun on the other hand. I think even during our own time, we don't have, problem with examples. Look at the example of the Shah of Iran. And the latest one would be Saddam. With all these palaces, huge palaces he had built in Iraq, I don't think he got time to spend in all of these palaces. And where did he end up? In this hole while he was still alive, with a suitcase carrying $1 million, which did not help him anyway. So this dunya with all luxuries is nothing. You have to keep the akhirah in your mind. We see examples in the past as well as in our own lifetime. This is where we have to see that, sometimes this tourist places where people go and see the ruins of the past civilization. These are good things to look at the civilizations of human beings, but they are also the signs to know that nobody is going to survive in this dunya. And that is the message which Quran gives again and again, and that's what you see in the sayings of Amirul Momineen also. Finally, let me go to the section where Amirul Momineen now talks to the people of his own time. And these are the people of Iraq mostly, majority. Many of them, of course, had come from Medina with him. But the majority were the Iraqi people. And this is after the events of Siffin, where, it became a inconclusive battle because of the unwise decision made by the Iraqis and their tribal leaders, because they were all following their tribal leaders. So if the leader was with Ali, they were with Ali. If they went with Muawiyah, they would go with Muawiyah. So it was not really affiliation based on iman and belief and knowledge. It was just a tribal solidarity which carried them to one side or the other. Majority of them were like that. And they were the ones who were deceived by this trick played by the people of Muawiyah when they were close to defeat. That's where they basically put the Quran on the spear, and we said we are willing to now settle on Quran. Whereas Amirul Momineen had proposed that from day one, and they had refused. And Ali knew this was just a trick to confuse the people, and unfortunately it went in a situation where they forced Ali to accept that arbitration, and when the result came, they realized that they had been tricked. And so the battle was inconclusive, and Ali was now gathering these people again for a second round against the Syrian forces. And this is where, this is not in this khutbah, there is a khutbah where he says, what is the matter with you people? When I say, let us go for, dealing with the rebellious group, you say, oh, it's very cold. So I wait till summer, and when summer comes, and when I tell you, now let's go, you say it's very hot. So you have excuse all the time, and you don't want to go. And it is in that background that Ali is talking to the people of Iraq, and he says, أيها الناس قد بينت لكم المواعظ التي وعظ بها الأنبياء أممهم وأديت إليكم ما أدت الأوصياء إلى من بعدهم. He says, oh people, I have divulged to you the advice which the prophets used to preach before their people. And I have conveyed to you what the khulafa of the prophets used to convey to the people after their Nabi. So I have fulfilled the duty. I have brought you to the message of the Anbiya and the Awsiya of the Anbiya. And so I talked to you, I taught you. And the number two, he says, I tried to train you in both ways. I used my whip, but you could not be straightened. Even the whip didn't work. I drove you with maw'izah and admonition, counseling, but that also did not change your behavior. So there was no reformation, whether I was strict with you or I was lenient with you. You did not change. You were still the same, misguided, your behavior is not even proper. And then Ali becomes very upset with them. And he uses the term, he says, Lillahi antum. Now the literal translation really wouldn't make a sense here. Allah and you. The way in Urdu we say, Tumhe Allah par chhod diya. I leave your issue now in the hands of Allah. He will deal with you. I'm fed up with you. Basically that's the sense you get from it. He says, what is the matter with you? May Allah deal with you. Are you expecting an imam other than me who will come and guide you to the right path and show you the way? If you are thinking about that way, you are wrong. And this is what Ali basically is saying, that I'm there to guide you and you're not following. And then he says, beware. Righteousness, good people who were there in the past, they are gone. The evil ones are still here. So now he's talking about the situation that when we were with the time of the Prophet, things were much, much better, but now I had to deal with the people who are no more worship people. They are evil people. And he says, as far as those who have been killed in Siffin, for them, if they have lived longer just like you, it wouldn't have benefited them at all. Because they have made their bargain with God. They basically gave their life for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they have achieved positively. But you are still there, and you're not even listening to what I'm saying, especially when I call you for jihad against the rebellious group. And this is where Amirul Momineen basically broke down basically. He started to cry. And this is where he remembers his loyal companions were killed in Siffin. And where he says, where he basically calls them. And he says, أين إخواني الذين ركبوا الطريق. And this is something worth, pondering for us. Before even I continue this last passage here, let me present to you something. We take pride, and of course, there's nothing wrong with it, in saying we are Shia of Ali, that we are followers of Ali. But to say for me that I am a Shia of Ali is one thing. For Ali to say that you are my Shia is something else. And if we look at that aspect, from the other side, that's where we have to evaluate ourselves. Whether we are on that level where Ali will say, yes, you are my Shia. So there is the theological level of becoming a Shia, and there is a moral and true level of being a Shia, where Ali takes pride. And this will be the example. That Ali remembers such people, and he says, أين إخوان الذين ركبوا الطريق ومضوا على الحق. Where are my brethren who basically, took the path and went on haqq till the end. And then he calls them. He says, أين عمار وأين ابن الطيحان وأين ذو الشهادتين وأين نظراؤهم من إخوانهم الذين تعاقدوا على المن وأبرد برؤوسهم إلى الفجر. Where are these people? Where is Ammar? Where is Ibn Tayhan? Where is Zu Shahadatain? And others who have gone with them and basically fulfilled their pledge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He mentions three people here. One is Ammar bin Yasir, one of the earliest Muslims in Mecca, whose parents, Ammar and Yasir and Sumayya, they were the first martyrs in the way of Allah. They were tortured by the mushrikeen to the point of death because they refused to renounce Islam. And so Ammar has been with the Prophet from a very young age. He went to Abyssinia in the first Hijrah, and then he came to Medina very early during the Hijrah of the Prophet. He participated in most of the battles with Rasulullah, and he was very close to him and highly praised by Rasulullah. There are times where he has said that Ammar, from his head to toe, is filled with Iman. In one point where there is a disagreement between him and some other groups, and they were basically taunting him, the Prophet said, don't say anything to him. Ammar is like the skin between my two eyes, or over my nose. This is the whole, when you harm him, you are hurting me. And he is one of those who basically was fully supportive of Ali bin Abi Talib from day one, even during the most difficult time after the wafat of Rasulullah. And it's interesting that the Prophet had told about Ammar to the people, that remember, O Ammar, you will be killed. You will be killed by a rebellious group. And it's interesting that he was with Ali all the time. He was there even in Jamal, in Siffin. It was in the battle of Siffin alongside Ali bin Abi Talib that he was killed on the 9th of Safar, the year 37 after Hijrah. He was more than 90 years old by that time. His death itself became a major problem for the Syrian forces, because there was somebody there who remembered when he was killed, and because he was a prominent member of the supporters of Ali, the news of his death spread around very quickly, like wildfire. And somebody said, well, the Prophet said that Ammar will be killed by the rebellious group. So it means that we on the Syrian side, Muawiyah's followers, are the rebellious group. That's where this became a a major issue, PR issue for Muawiyah. He consulted his advisor, Amr ibn As, and who said, you know, go and tell your Syrian people that the person responsible for the death of Ammar is the one who brought him to Siffin. So he wanted to basically, you know, the damage control issue. So the hadith would be reversed to Ali. And when Amirul Momineen was told about this trick of Muawiyah and Amr ibn As, Ali said, it means if I'm responsible for the death of Ammar, then Rasulullah is responsible for the death of his uncle Hamza, because Hamza went to you know, Uhud because Rasulullah took him. And so, but it's a matter of, you know, people are so ignorant. We see during our own time, you look at the society in the US, they have it's an affluent society. Knowledge is there at the highest level, but when you look at the general people and their general knowledge about the world around, they don't even know much about Canada. You know, so manipulation by media, what we see, you know, this is nothing new, and an example can be seen in the case of the Shahadat of Ammar bin Yasir in Siffin. The second person that Ali talks about is Ibn al-Tayhan. His full name is Abu Haytham Malik al-Tayhan al-Ansari, one of the chiefs of the Ansar. And he is also similar to Ammar among the early companions of the Prophet, and a supporter of Ali, who was there in Jamal in Siffin, and he became Shaheed in Siffin. And the third one that Ali mentioned is Zuz Shahadatain. This is Khuzayma bin Thabit al-Ansari, an Ansar from Medina, and he is known as Zuz Shahadatain. Means the person who, the holder of two testimonies. Because there was a story in the life of the Prophet where he basically, the Prophet took his testimony equal to two, you know, testimonies. So he was called somebody who is equal to two witnesses. And he was also with Ali in Jamal as well as Siffin, and he's the one who became also Shaheed. And when he was fighting in Siffin, there were some people who said, you know, you are very courageously fighting in Siffin. You are old. Why are you giving so much, you know, will and your strength in this? And that's why he says, well, I heard the Prophet saying that fight on the side of Ali. So I'm remembering their hadith, and that's what I'm putting my best effort in fighting here alongside Ali bin Abi Talib. And so, and then Ali goes on to, you know, remember them for 5 things. And that's, I think, a message for all of us. You know, when he remembers the name of his followers there, especially remembering them not just as the Shias, he says, وَعَيْنَ إِخْوَانِي, where are my brethren? You know, where are my brothers? And this is really a privilege for these people to be called a brother by Ali bin Abi Talib. And then he describes them. He says, you know, these are all my brothers. And then 5 things he mentioned. He says, who recited the Quran, تلوا القرآن فأحكموه. They recited the Quran and basically lived by it. Reading the Quran is one thing, understanding it is one thing, you know, writing commentary of Quran is one thing, learning the whole Quran by heart is one thing, but living by Quran is something else. And that is actually the objective. Everything else is just, you know, it's just like doing wuzu and not then doing namaz. You know the best of recitation of the Quran, you know the tafsir of the Quran, you understand the meaning of the Quran, but if it's not the basis of your life, then it's really useless. And that's the first message that we are getting from Ali as far as, you know, true Muslims and his followers are concerned, that they have to not only be the reciters of the Quran, but those who live by the Quran. Number 2, he says, they are the people who ponder, تَدَبَّرُوا الْفَرْضَ وَأَقَامُوهُ. They basically pondered on the obligations, thought about the obligations and fulfilled them. That these are the obligations and we have to fulfill them. Number 3, he says, وَأَحْيُوا السُنَّةَ وَأَمَاتُوا الْبِدَعَ. they looked at the Sunnah of the Prophet and they basically seriously tried to revive the Sunnah of the Prophet and to oppose the Bid'ah. Bid'ah means, making something which is not allowed to be the part of religion into, part of religion. That's where Bid'ah comes in. Because you have Sunnah and then you have Bid'ah. They are opposites. And then number 4, he says, دُعُوا لِلْجِهَادِ فَأَجَابُوا. These were not like you, referring to the people at that time. He says, they were not like you. When they were called for jihad, they responded positively. They did not, ask questions, it is cold or hot, they have problems. No, when we called them, they responded to it. And finally he says, وَوَثِقُوا بِالْقَائِدِ فَاتَّبِعُوهُ. They trusted their leader and they followed him. And so the issue is that if you really to say that, yes, you are my leader, I believe in you, but the issue is trusting them and following them is an important part of the concept of wilayat and imamah. And so at the end, that Ali ended by saying, Al-jihad, ibadallah, ala wa inni mu'askirun fi yawmi hadha, faman arada al-rawah ila Allah falyakhruj. Then Ali says that, today I'm mobilizing the army, and whoever is willing, he should come, for the sake of Allah, come with me. And the plan was that, Amirul Momineen had then appointed Imam Hussain alayhi salam as the commander of a 10,000 force, and Qais bin Sa'ad on another 10,000 others. Abu Ayyub Ansari was made the commander of 10,000 other soldiers, and different groups, and they were basically being mobilized to get ready to move towards Siffin for the second time. But next day the tragedy took place, and this whole campaign was basically suspended. And so we, this is the last khutbah of Amirul Momineen as a khutbah. Of course, there are even sayings after that, in the 2-3 days that he survived before his shahadat. But this was the last khutbah, and especially the last part I thought it was very powerful message that Ali is given to us, that just to be a Shia or a Muslim in name is not sufficient. We really have to live up to that name and that title. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our amal and our understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet and teachings of the Ahlul Bayt. And may He give us the tawfiq to be among the true followers of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We'll have 5 minutes for questions if you want. No? Yeah. Well, I think when you say that the knowledge that Amirul Momineen had was not of a normal kind of or level, and so your question is whether something happened to him just as it happened to the Prophet, where the cleansing of the Prophet took place. I'm referring to the story where we are told that in his childhood he was referring to the ayat where God says in Quran, Alam nashrah laka sadrak, that did we not expand your chest? Well, we have a problem with the story actually, because Alam nashrah laka sadrak, that's Surah in Shirah, where Allah is counting His blessings on Prophet Muhammad. And one opinion is that they take that verse in the literal sense, that, and relating to that story of, when he was still very young, and he was in the desert under the care of Halima, the nurse. The angel came and basically, opened his chest and took out his heart, or cleansed it and put it back. No, the way the Shia perspective from the Imams Ahlul Bayt is that Sharh al-Sadr is not the literal meaning there. It's basically one way. For example, even in English we say he's a big-hearted person. Big-hearted doesn't mean physically his heart is big. It means that he's a generous generous person, or a person who has the ability to, the ability for forbearance in face of challenges and difficulties. So those would be the meaning, or the issue of, to be a source where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showers His special blessings, whether it is knowledge, but it's not to be taken in the literal sense. There are problems with the way this story has come. I actually have something, if you want, later on I can photocopy the writing on that issue. And so what we believe is that it's very similar to the example as far as the Prophet is concerned, the example of Prophet Isa ibn Maryam, where in Quran, I think it's in Surah Maryam or some other place where Allah talks about his birth. And while he was still in the cradle, less than a week old, when Maryam brought him among her tribe people, people objected to what they saw. They said, you come from a very noble family, very righteous family. What happened? How can you have a child while you are not married as yet? And that's where Quran says, Maryam was told not to worry about this problem and just leave it to Isa. Now, Isa is a baby, maybe 3 or 4, at most a week old. And when the people raised this objection, Maryam indicated that ask the baby. And Quran says, كَيْفَ نُكَلِّمُ مَنْ كَانَ فِي الْمَحْدِ صَبِيًّا. The people of Maryam responded to Maryam by saying, do you take us as a joke? How can we talk to a baby who is in the cradle? And that's where Isa speaks by the power of Allah, and he says, إِنِّي عَبْدُ اللَّهِ آتَانِي الْكِتَابَ وَجَعَلَنِي نَبِيًّا. I am the servant of Allah, and He's given me knowledge. He's given me a book. Book there doesn't mean physical. He didn't come with the Injil in a physical sense there at that time. And He has given me knowledge, and He has made me a Nabi. So knowledge came at that stage, even very early, when he was still in the cradle. And so when we talk about the Prophet, of course, his status above Isa ibn Maryam, and Allah has definitely, blessed him in that way. When it comes to Ali bin Abi Talib, when the Prophet himself says in his famous hadith that I quoted earlier, in the beginning of my talk, where the Prophet says, Ana Madinatul Ilm, I am the city of knowledge, and Ali is the Bab, the gate to that city. If you want it, you go through him. And that's an indication that whatever the Prophet knew, it was conveyed by him to Ali. And Ali becomes the source of that knowledge of Rasulullah. And that's why, many people are so much amazed by it, that there is actually a saying famous among scholars, and this is from Sunni sources, where they say that when they look at Nahjul Balagha, they are forced to say that this is دون كلام الخالق وفوق كلام المخلوق. Ali's statements are below the speech of Almighty God, but it's above the speech of a normal human being. So it's not on that same category. And that's why there are some people who raised questions. This whole debate about whether Nahjul Balagha is authentic or not, this whole debate was more fueled because of this issue that some people say, Ali is saying things where the Arabs at that time didn't even have the ability to comprehend. But then Ali himself says in one of his khutbah, he says, after he had been attacked. He says, you have not appreciated me. غَدًا تَرَوْنَ أَيَّامِي. Tomorrow you will come to know me. Means tomorrow means in future. And we have people like, I think it was Khalil Gibran Khalil, a non-Muslim, Lebanese intellectual. He says, or was it him or George Jordan, I'm not sure, one of them, who said, I really have a serious complaint with God, that if He wanted to create a person like Ali, why did He send him at that time? We need Ali during our own time. And so it's true that when you look at his, what he has left for us, it really is about the normal level of the time. Yes. Yes, yes. Well, in a way you can say that, yeah. When purity is there, purity comes with the grace of Allah, and the biggest grace of Allah would be knowledge. Inshallah, we'll send the sermon in the email, and even the one which we'll be discussing next week, inshallah, and then we'll meet you on Wednesday.